welcome to the Full Steam Ahead. I am Michelle Semerano. The Cecil Trust Enriching Art and Music, it's better known as the STEAM Fund, is on a mission to inspire creativity and opportunity. They support music, the arts, and education in communities and schools across Sullivan County and beyond. If you want to help fuel the arts, you can visit thesteamfund.org to learn more and to make your donation today. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming a true legend, a jazz drummer, composer, and educator, Thurman Barker. Welcome, Thurman. Thank you for being here. Thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here.
So I want to start out with, you've had this completely storied career. We'll get to, where you started and all the legends that you have played with, but who is Thurman Barker?
Well, Thurman Barker is the son of parents who were part of the Great Migration. My parents moved from Oklahoma to Chicago in, I guess, the late 30s. I'm the only child. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And during elementary school, my last year, I guess 7th grade, I went to what they call an assembly, which was actually a concert. And long story short, the drummer gave this solo performance, and he happened to be the drummer for Joe Cocker. His name was Roy Robinson. And that was my first time I have ever seen anyone express music on the drums. And that's actually where it all started. I went home immediately after school and said I wanted to take music lessons. And my mother, bless her soul, she said, well, that's going to be an extra cost because my parents were working parents. And so maybe I may have to take on a part-time job. So we started selling Avon to pay for my music lessons twice a week. And also, she enrolled me at the American Conservatory of Music. And cutting to the chase, I met James Dutton, who was the director of percussion arts. And he said, well, drum lessons, that's a good idea, but first I think we need to study some theory. And I think that would be the best for you. And little did I know, I was a little disappointed because theory, now I'm thinking of, I got to learn scales, I got to learn this, and I just want to play drums. And so the program they had me under was a 2-year program, and each week for 2 years I studied theory. And it was frustrating because each week I went for my theory lesson and I had to sit there and look at the drum set, and I just wanted to get on that set and just bang away. And meanwhile I had to write out time signatures, bar lines, scales, and all of this. And after the 2-year program was over, when I actually started taking drum lessons, my appreciation for music went to another level. And I think it had something to do with the fact that my music appreciation, I had to listen to Mozart, I had to listen to Leonard Bernstein, I had to listen to Rimsky-Korsakov and all these folks. And so when I actually started listening to jazz, my appreciation, I could understand what was going on.
Right.
And I learned that when I became a professor, I realized that in order to play music, you have to learn how to listen to music. So I learned that from some of my early students who thought they could just jump in and play without listening. And I said, no, it doesn't work like that. You kind of have to pay attention to what the next person is doing beside you.
Right. Listening is a huge part of playing music.
A huge part. But anyway, so that's where it all began. And so I like to say, actually, Chicago taught me how to play. New York is different. New York taught me how to present. So those are two different things. You get a lesson from where you are and what you're doing. So that's where it all started. And I carried on that same concept when I started teaching at Bard. Because unfortunately some students that were just starting college, they thought now is my time to study music, and some did start and went on to continue, but of course it was a little difficult for those who were starting so late, But anyway, that same concept is very important. Theory is no doubt the best way to start music.
And I'm sure taking those lessons, right, from such a young age, you said 7th, 8th grade, so we're talking like 12, 13 years old.
Yes.
And you had your first real job at 16.
Yes.
I mean, at 16 years old, I was worried about getting my driver's license and where I was going to the mall. And at 16 in Chicago, what was the world like?
It actually started a little before that. My first gig was my drum set teacher. His name was Harold Jones. And he had a brother named Melvin. And Melvin had a rock band. And Melvin had a gig on the north side of Chicago. And it was a steady gig, 4 nights a week. And there I was 15 years old. My father literally, speaking of driving, I wasn't driving yet. So I was 15. My father literally had to take me to the club every night, which he did not like. But after a while, it gave him an opportunity to get out of the house and maybe have a little shot or something. I don't know. But anyway, so yes, and it actually started before. And that gig, 4 nights a week. I was in high school. I had money. I was making $7 a night.
Wow.
So for a high school guy, Monday morning when I went to school, I was kind of strutting my stuff because I had money in my pocket and I was playing music and it was great. But let's talk about something bigger than me, because the opportunities that came my way shows actually a much bigger picture. And that picture is how active Chicago was as I guess it was called the third city but Chicago was the main stopping ground for folks or artists, dancers, theater people, musicians who are traveling from New York to the West Coast. They all had to stop in Chicago. They all had to book a date in Chicago. And so Chicago was a very lively city, and the old phrase, timing is everything. When I actually started playing artistic music, I like to say, because in the early days, let me put it this way, Chicago was, a growing city, the Great Migration, a lot of folks were there. Jobs, people were working. This is after the Depression. People were working, had jobs. So to be entertained was very popular. I mean, there were jobs that I was doing that started 4 in the afternoon to like 7, 8 o'clock, and then another band would come in and play the night show. Well, I was doing those a lot of those gigs, and they were in lounges, as Chicago's known for lounges. So people would stop after work, stop in a lounge, have a drink, a little something before they go home. And that was very popular in Chicago. So I said that to say that there was just a very active music scene. And anyone who was interested in being a musician did not have far to go because, number one, there were a lot of musicians in Chicago. So you had some camaraderie, you know. You had a lot of places to play. And most important, you had a lot of people who were interested in going out to hear the live music, I'll put it that way. Nowadays, things are different. But back then, Chicago was still, you know, live music was people demanded live music. It was part of the Chicago culture.
And what was the jazz scene like during that time?
Active. You had the South Side, you had the North Side, and you had the West Side. And it's funny that you asked that because the South Side folks were kind of all over the place, and the music was more contemporary. The West Side, it was a little bit closer to the music that you would hear in the South. And the North Side was more blues oriented. So you really had your choice. Also, there was there was a recording scene, WVON, the big radio station there. Some of my earliest recordings by the AACM, Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians. We'll get into that later. But some of our earlier recordings, that when I started playing music that was considered artistic, I was 17. So all of those little jobs that I was doing, you know, entertaining folks in the late afternoon and those little jobs, prepared me for what was to come. And what was to come was more on a professional level, you know, where you had to read music, and there was a job, you had to have a rehearsal and all that. I mean, those earlier jobs, there was no rehearsal. You get a call and you go and you play all these standards, you know. But that's the bigger picture, and I was one, fortunately, with the help of my teachers, because a lot of my earlier work actually came from my teachers, because my teachers were very active on the scene themselves. Like when I started doing drum lessons, Harold Jones was very active. For instance, he was a drummer at the Playboy Club. And when he got the call to go with Count Basie in 1971, of course, I've done recordings and all this, but I'm saying teachers played a role in my success. When he got the call to go to Count Basie, well, he came to me and said, well, can you work at the Playboy Club for me for a month? All right? So now I had to put on a tuxedo, and that's where I met people, played behind Vicky Carr. I'm trying to think of the husband and wife, Edie Gourmet and the husband, I can't think of his name. So I met folks like that.
Right.
We would have a little rehearsal in the afternoon, and then we would play. It was like a supper club.
Okay.
But what was interesting, the audience, the room where we were playing, it was like a living room. And people, the audience are right up on you, you know. And I had my own locker with my tuxedo in there. And so at 20, I guess I'm 21, 22 then, I really felt that I had made it.
I was going to say, was that your aha moment?
Yes, I said, wow, because I had to put on a tux. I was done by 11:30 at night. I was home by midnight, and I went to work at 7 o'clock in the evening, and so there you go. So, but Chicago, it was in the Drake Hotel. The Playboy Club was in the Drake Hotel. So you had that going on. You had these clubs that were on the south side, west side, north side, and each section, because Chicago didn't have much of an east side, because Lake Michigan ran into it. So each section had their own style, and I have to say that a lot of my success came from taking advantage of the music scene that existed.
It's amazing. Taking advantage of that scene, let's talk about the Shubert Theater.
Yeah.
Again,
Wow.
a historical landmark.
It certainly is.
And still is to this day. But, I mean, you've played there how many times? Just a rough amount, would you say you've played there? How many times?
Well, I was there for 10 years.
10 years, okay.
And my first show was, believe it or not, was Hair. And this has a little, let me give you a little backstory that led this up, because I had no idea of the level that I was dealing with. So in order to learn the show, first of all, my contractor, he was from Russia, violin player. In Chicago, all the theaters were ran by violin players for some reason. I don't know how, but they were the contractors of the theater. And these were excellent musicians, but they just didn't want to play classical music. They wanted to do theater. So, 1968, my girlfriend at the time, she auditioned for Hair, and she was one of the dancers. And she came home and said, "Look, they're looking for a percussionist." And I said, "Yeah, you think I have a chance?" She said, "Well, hey, it's not going to hurt to go down." And anyway, that show. So I went down. I got the job, and now it's the percussion chair. Now, the drum chair was covered by a guy by the name of Shelley. And he was very active in the recording studio. This is what you call, he's a recording artist. You know, a lot of folks are doing demos. They bring a demo and they have a recording session. Well, that was his gig. Doing 8 shows a week and 2 matinees, no, he didn't want no part of that. Okay? So check this out. After a month, he said, this is too much. I can't deal with this. Because he was very active doing the recording stuff in the daytime, And he said, "Thurman, why don't you move?" Because he knew I was a drummer. So he said, "Why don't you take over the drum chair? Because I'm out of here." And the percussion player from the American Conservatory, I went to him and said, "Look, why don't you take over the percussion chair? Because I'm moving over to the drum chair." Long story short, that job lasted 2 years.
Wow.
And to be able to play a show, that was my first show, to go to work every day. I mean, this is, the feeling I got was, it gave me a feeling that I was part of something that was much bigger than just being a drummer.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had 21 people who were depending on my beat. 21. So I'm saying to say that I liked the idea that everybody was dependent on me, and because it gave me a feeling of control.
Yeah, yeah.
And it also gave me a feeling how important my role was. To have 21 people relying on you. So my next show that I did was The Me Nobody Knows, which was a musical like Sesame Street. It had puppets, and it was a small combo, and so we did the music. My next show was Godspell, Promises, Promises, Ain't Nobody, Fats Waller show. Ain't Misbehaving.
I was
Thank
going to
you.
say, yeah.
Ain't Misbehaving. And the Duke Ellington show that featured the music of Duke Ellington. Sophisticated Lady. It was a Broadway show that featured the music of Duke Ellington. I did that. So, and I did Raisin in the Sun, actually, which was on TCM last night. The drama, Angela Lansbury. It's a hell of a play, I have to say. I mean, so I did Raisin in the Sun, and so the experience was, to answer your question, the experience, it gave me a sense of an artist. It gave me a sense of responsibility. It gave me a sense of what it's like actually being a full-time musician and having a job. And meeting all these folks. So the job was fantastic. Just to show you the backside of it, in order for me to learn the show, the contractor would give me a call and say, okay, we have Grease coming in. So Schubert Theater would send me an itinerary, fly me to New York. I learned the show, and I sat at the Schubert Theater in New York on Broadway, learn the show. I go on the road, and we go back to Chicago, and we sit there for 7 weeks, 15 weeks, or 3 months. This was the theater way of not paying a traveler, because they were paying me as a local guy. In Chicago local union, and not a traveler. So the show actually saved a lot of money. The conductor was traveling with the show, and the pianist. Those were the only two people that was actually traveling with the show. Everybody else was, local, wherever we are. So that was quite an experience to really come to New York and not really hang out on a jazz scene. I had to be in the theater and to learn the show. And then once the show was over, I had to get on the plane and we go on tour, and we then go to Chicago and sit there for however long.
And how many weeks would you be in New York to learn the show?
2.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. It was always 2 weeks. And Pearly Victorious, I never will forget. The conductor, her name was Grace Jones. And so I got the call. I had to meet the show in Toronto. I never will forget this, because there was a snowstorm the night that I was leaving, and I was stranded. And the plane ended up going to Buffalo, and then the next day I ended up in where the show was, which was in Toronto, and so I missed the show. My point is, it wasn't my fault, but the conductor, boy, she gave me that evil look for like 2 or 3 days. And once I learned the show, everything was cool, but I realized, Thurman. And I said, hey, it wasn't my fault,
It's Mother Nature.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but it was an experience I'll never forget. And to all those young musicians out there who get an opportunity to get in theater, I certainly strongly suggest take advantage of it, because you just never know where it's going to lead.
And what was the experience of being, at the Playboy Club, right? Being forefront, everybody could see you, everything, to them being in theater and you're in the pit, tucked
Yes.
under a stage, nobody can see you in that aspect, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, what was that experience like? You were used to being seen, and now you're not. I mean, huge part of the show, but not seen.
Exactly. Well, in a way, I felt exposed because, I had this tuxedo on, and I had to be very correct. And of course, if you play in a room like that, there's really no hard blowing. Mm. So that saved me, right? The music is kind of, first of all, the band was a trio, piano, bass, and drums. So there's no hard blowing involved. But I did feel exposed because the audience was like as close to I and the engineer right there. And they're sitting down having their dinner and drinking and a small talk, and there we are doing a show. So what it also did, it let me know that I learned how to play the room,
Yeah.
I could play with a little intensity, but it could be controlled.
You learn to adapt.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
within a space.
Exactly.
You had mentioned it a little earlier, the AACM.
Yes.
A founding charter member. Let's talk about that a little bit, and how important that is, not only to your career but to your life.
Well, first of all, the AACM, we're celebrating our 60th anniversary as we speak.
Wow!
Right
Congratulations.
Now. Thank you. We have events in New York this fall. The dates I have is November 15 at Roulette in Brooklyn, and my chamber orchestra piece will be performed at the Domina Center of Classical Music in New York. So, the AACM, wow, yes. I guess I can safely say the AACM raised me. I joined the AACM, became a member at 16. And my mother, I never will forget, when the founder and president of the AACM, his name is Dr. Muhal Richard Abrams. He's a pianist and composer. And in 1965, when the AACM, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, became a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to create and perform and record unrecorded music. Mm. In other words, our mission mainly is to present and record original music. And that was their mission. Of course, me being 16 and a teenager, that was their mission was way above what I was thinking about, because I like the opportunity that now I'm playing with some musicians that were serious in the fact that, they didn't drink. And my mother liked that because she had to take me down to the experimental band. Dr. Muhal Richard Abrams, he conducted the experimental band. And when I say these guys raised me, I mean, they were all 4 to 6, 8 years older than I was. But they were already professional and playing original music, see? So becoming a member, I learned some good habits. And one of the habits I learned that these musicians believe in practicing. Mm-hmm. And number 2, I wanted to be as good as they were on their instrument. Of course, I'm a little intimidated because they're older and they're knew what they were doing and they had a mission. And but for me, for the first time, this was I found myself utilizing the skills that I had learned at the American Conservatory, which was reading music, because these guys had charts. That was the idea. They would bring in music they had been working on. Maybe they wrote it that day. Maybe it was an idea. But that was the whole point of the experimental band, was to work and perform and practice and record original music. And for the first time, I got a chance to use my mallets on the drum set, because there were passages I had to play soft. Then I had to use my brushes, which I was certainly prepared me for when I worked at the Playboy Club, because a lot of that was brushwork. And but it was that experience required me to read their charts. And that was what I liked about it. So when so at 16, I met Joseph Jarman. He's a woodwind player, played saxophone and all the saxophone. And he brought me into his quartet. And next thing I know, we were making a recording. So I made my first recording at 17. And the recording is called Song 4. And it's by Joseph Jarman Quartet. And so this led to other members of the group started writing more. And this record company in Chicago called Delmark Records, to show you sometimes you have to take chances. You don't know what it's going to turn out. But Delmark Record, the proprietor was, I'll think of it in a minute, but he recorded blues. That was what his label was all about, blues. And but he heard a concert that we were doing. The AACM is all about musicians taking part and having control over their destiny, really, because that's what we all ended up doing. Bob Kessner, that was his name, Robert Kessner. His label was called Delmark Records, and we recorded Coco Taylor, all the big blues people, you know. And but he came to a concert, heard a concert, and said, gee, these guys are really doing something really different, and I think I'm interested in recording them. So Song 4 came out on Delmark Records. Next thing I know, Moo Hall, the president and founder of the AACM, he was getting ready to make a recording. He asked me to be on. So now I've got 2 recordings under my belt, and the list goes on. So when I say they actually raised me to become a professional musician, I watched them, how they went about their work. And so it means a lot. Your teachers have a huge responsibility. And I'm proud to say, after 30 years of Bard College, of being a professor, I have about 10 students, and maybe more, but 10 that I know of who were professional musicians.
That's amazing.
Okay?
That's amazing.
And they stay in touch with me. They call me up and let me know what they're doing. So it means a lot, and I'm glad that they're doing what they're doing. And I did a lot while I was a professor teaching. I took my ensemble to play at the Culinary Institute in Poughkeepsie, and we had
Not a bad place to play.
Yeah, we had a whole semester there, and we got a meal, and got a little money, and the students got their first experience of performing. And I look at that as part of my job.
I was how you started.
That's
you
how I
played
started.
Performing while people were eating and drinking.
Exactly. So after 60 years, the AACM has turned out. There are 7 composers who will have their music performed at the Domina Center on November 18 in New York. And 7 composers. And we have a charter organization or a sister organization that are still in Chicago. But the first organization is based here in New York. And we're celebrating 60 years, and we have actually musicians, to name a few: Anthony Braxton, Leo Smith, Henry Threadgill, myself, Moo Hall, Richard Abrams, and many, many more. So we are putting all this together for this celebration, and we also have events going on in Chicago.
Very exciting. So you start in Chicago. Throughout the years, you're coming to New York to learn, new sets of music for Broadway shows. How do you end up now here in New York? How does Thurman end up here in New York?
Well, my goal was first of all, me being close to my colleagues like Anthony Braxton. He moved up here in '79, went to Europe. Henry Threadgill, he moved up in '72. John Stubblefield, he's a saxophone player with the Mingus Dynasty Band. He moved up in '75. So what held me back was the Shubert Theater, because it didn't make sense for me to leave the Shubert Theater. I mean, I have this prestigious job at the theater. And so after 10 years, Michelle, the contractor called me up and said, "Thurman, look, we got a new show coming in, and it's an opera. And I know you have no opera experience." The show was called Evita. "I know you have no opera experience, so we're going to make a change." And he had no idea that I was on the other end of the phone saying, "Yes, this is my time to move to New York." So after all those years, I had money saved, and so that fall, the fall of '79, even though I started working in New York in '77, but I was still living in Chicago, but the people would bring me up to New York, But to actually move, it was the fall of '79, I moved to New York. And it was an interesting experience because all of my friends were in Manhattan, and I had a piano, drum set, a marimba, a brand new truck, and I said, well, I can't be crashing at all my friends' house in Manhattan. What am I going to do with all this stuff? So a friend of mine from high school I ran into, he said, "Look here, man, you ought to come to Yonkers, because I live in Yonkers, and there's a train stop right there at the station where I live." I said, "Really?" So I ended up going to check it out, and I said, "Oh, this is ideal." And I moved to Yonkers. And I was in Yonkers, I guess pretty much for 10 months. And that was a very different. There were days, like I say, all my friends were in Manhattan, And the only time they would call me or talk to me was on the weekends when it was cheaper. Okay, so there were like 2 and 3 days I wouldn't even talk to anybody. But I got a lot done, Michelle. You know what? Because in those 10 months, I wrote the music for my debut album called Voyage. Because moving to New York, all of a sudden, I wasn't getting any phone calls. I had no work. I was literally living off of unemployment. I wasn't playing any music because nobody knew I was in town. So it was a real quiet moment for me to reflect on Thurman Barker and who am I and what am I going to do now? In Chicago, I had this nice, secure situation. Calls were coming in. I would have to farm calls out to other drummers sometimes because, but now it's quiet. So that's when I realized, Thurman, it's time for you to write some music. And number 2, you're going to have to create a scene for yourself. Because when I looked around, that's what everybody had done. They had created a scene for themselves. And I said, well, how can I do that? I mean, I'm living in Yonkers. And anyway, John Stubblefield, bless his heart, saxophone player and composer, he gave me my first job living in Yonkers. And it was at in Brooklyn. And it was at the Restoration Center in downtown Brooklyn. Long story short, all of a sudden, thanks to John Stubblefield, he started letting everybody know that Thurman's in town. And so I had this opportunity after 10 months of being in Yonkers, a scene opened up in Manhattan, and I jumped on it right away. And next thing you know, I was in the East Village, and it was great.
You felt at home.
Oh, I did, because I was a bachelor, and I was living in New York City, and I loved it. I mean, I had a 2-bedroom apartment. I was in the East Village, and during the late 70s, it was a lot going on in East Village. It was a nice little music scene, and Slugs was right. I was living on 9th Street between B and C. And when I told people where I lived, they said, oh, no, I don't want to go down there. I said, it's fine. It's great. I don't have it was perfect for me. Tompkins Square Park was right there. Anyway, everything changed. I started getting calls. I liked being in New York. And that's where Upteep Productions started, my record company, and I produced my first record in '86, and now I have my first solo album out there, and I was actually feeling like I had made the right decision to move.
Talk about starting your own record company.
Yeah, well, that's another whole job, Michelle. Matter of fact, I'm in my I'm working on my 8th CD as we speak right now, and that's another whole beast. But you know what? I don't mind it because I'm learning a lot about the industry and the business. It's a lot of work. So now my suggestion to young musicians out there that are listening to this, be prepared to do it all, because being able to rely on your creativity and your talents is not going to make it. Now you literally have to be a business. You have to learn the business of this industry. and you have to get out. You have to talk to people. You may have to, get involved in situations you don't want to be a part of, but you need to go because you're going to meet somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not social like that. I had to really learn how to do that, but it is part of the industry because otherwise people, like New York, I make sure I appear in New York at least 3 times a year. So I still keep my connections in New York City. People say 3 times a year, that's nothing. Well, for me it's something because I live upstate.
Right.
But New York is, for me, it's important. For other folks, it maybe not.
Right.
But for me, it was important. But yes, New York taught me how to present a show, and creativity is certainly part of it. But I realized that you had to establish these 4 categories to be successful in this industry.
And what are those 4 categories?
I was afraid you were going to say. Creativity is 1.
Okay.
Variety is 2. Volume is 3, how much work you have out there. And documentation. So if you have those 4 things going for you, like I say, I'm working on my 8th album, and each one is different. I made a point. Each one is different. But yes, those 4 categories, that's what I learned. And when I look at musicians who are successful, and I'm not talking about in terms of money or how large a house is, I'm talking about just being active as an artist. The last thing you want is for folks to forget who you are. And the last thing you want is for folks to say, oh, I heard Thurman. Yeah, I've heard that. He does the same show all the time. That would be murder.
Right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
So it's important to always be working. And so you're asking me, well, gee, here you are, a senior, and you're still working. And I must say, I'm honored to be still working. It makes me feel good that I wake up every morning and have something to do.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure we can all relate to that. But, I never was one to settle. And this is one thing my colleagues taught me. And I'm speaking of Henry and all the guys at AACM. They're still creating, they're still working, they're still coming up with new stuff to do.
It's still part of the hustle, and it sounds like your mom and your dad started that at a young age with you. It was, hustling is not just going out and getting the gig; it's being a part of it, it's creating it, it's everything that goes along with it, that
That's
variety, everything. So it's that hustle that you still enjoy.
I had no idea I would be writing for chamber orchestra. But Dr. Muhal, Richard Abrams, gave me a lot of support. He liked the music that I was writing for quartet and quintets. And he suggested, well, you start writing some bigger pieces, And so I on one sabbatical that I had, of course, you on sabbatical and you could get lazy and, but on my sabbaticals, I was always, one sabbatical, I did take a trip to New Orleans. I felt since I'm teaching jazz, I got to at least go down to New Orleans and see what people are talking about, right? But, no, I didn't think that I would be writing, but I'm glad I did because I had to go and study orchestration. And by doing that, I had to actually work and study these instruments that I'm not used to using, like bassoon, French horn, bass trombone, and how they work together. And it's taught me about listening now. I listen to music differently because I'm writing for all these instruments. And so I'm getting ready to present 2 new chamber pieces this fall. And then I'm going back to improvisation. Yeah, because, all these challenges do require skill. And so I'm going back to writing for maybe for duets or trios, smaller pieces, because these chamber orchestra pieces, they do require a lot of time, I mean, the 2 I've written, it took me like 6 months to write it and another 6 months to orchestrate it. So you're talking about a whole year's work just doing that. So after doing that, I can't wait to just go to a jam session and just bang and play.
Go back to that first moment of I just want to bang on those drums.
Exactly. So it's been so Thurman Barker right now. I'm still learning about music, and I'm fortunate to be playing.
Absolutely. And I think that's any musician, successful musician, you're always learning. There's always a piece of the business, something new you're adding to your repertoire. You're always learning. And I think that's a huge part of being a musician.
It's a very competitive scene out there. And it's, you have to, and people are always, I'm not the only creative person out there. It's a lot of creative people out there doing something new. And so I want to be a part of that scene. I want to be current, So being able to present some new music, being able to play with the Callicoon Center Band is fun. Okay, when I go there, when I'm done, I feel better with my rolls and marches and everything. So I get something out of each performance.
And there's nothing beneath you as
No.
a musician.
Oh, no.
Which is amazing.
No. Nothing. It's Duke Ellington had the right answer. There's only 2 kinds of music, good and bad. Okay, and that's true. That's how I look at it. It's so the scene right now is certainly different from what it was when I came up. Different in the sense of you don't have those 4 and 5 nights in a row. Most of the dates you have, you're lucky if you're playing 2 gigs in a row. So it's spotty, but it's okay because it does allow me a little time to have a life. And when you get to be a senior, of course, you got to spend some time to take care of yourself. And so I did get my walk in today,
Very important thing to make sure you get that walk in.
Exactly. And, this is about longevity, this industry. Of course, nobody tells you that when you first start. But during the course of this process and time, I've lost a lot of friends. And so you realize that, it's really about longevity.
Mm-hmm. What's the biggest impact that is, not only on your, as a musician, but what has been that biggest impact on you just as a person within the industry? What or whom, I should say?
Well, Muhal Richard Havens was a huge impact. That's why that's called impact. There's no one thing, you know. I observe people like I mentioned variety. I look at folks who I was listening to a lot in the '60s: John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Chick Corea, all these folks, Anthony Braxton. They didn't stay in one place. Okay, they changed up their bands because they were hearing something different. You know, right now I'm in my writing. I'm I'm incorporating um, more percussion. I learned this from working musical theater because everything in musical theater was written out and arranged, even in the percussion section. And hearing parts for wood blocks and triangle and timpani and tambourine is exciting to me when they're written out. Um, have you seen the movie Black Orpheus? There's this little kid he is wailing away on that tambourine, and I mean he's dancing at the same time. Um, I guess that's my next thing. I got to improve my dancing. Yeah.
You got the rhythm.
Yeah, yeah. But now I want to apply it to something. So Duke Ellington said that the best musicians who communicate are also good dancers. And I realize, and that I definitely want to keep up my dancing skills.
I love that. So besides dancing,
yes,
what's next for Thurman Barker?
Well, in terms of writing, there's a lot. But in terms of writing music, I would like to write my first symphony. In terms of I want to learn. It's time for me to learn a language. That's so I can communicate with my family because they're talking. My son is my daughter's learning Dutch now, and my son, he's learning Spanish. Is letting me know, Thurman, you better catch up, man. Anyway, so I have a lot of things, but musically, after I get back to writing and for small ensembles, I'm going to tackle a symphony.
Wow.
I don't think I'm going to, some of my colleagues like Anthony Davis, he's written operas. I like opera. I'm doing one right now. But I don't, boy, that's a lot of work. That's a big job because you got to deal with costumes. You got to deal with text. You got to deal with music. You got to deal with acting. It might
you
be.
See Evita coming back and you on the other line.
Yeah, I don't know. But who knows? But right now, I would like to write my first symphony.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for
wonderful.
inviting me. And thanks to the staff here for making all this happen. Thanks to Gary and Judy and the show. Right now, let me see. So what am I doing right now? Right now, I am doing my 7th opera, Don Giovanni, and Mozart is the music, so I'm doing that. I'm enjoying it. We opened last weekend. We're going to finish up this coming up weekend. And then I taking a road trip to Denver, see my grandkids. And a short trip, though. and I'm coming back, and I'm gonna be performing. Because I have a tour, I have a tour, and this is something we've done. This is our third year. We're doing. I'm working with Ricky Ford. He's a saxophonist and composer, and you can find him with the Mingus Dynasty Band. But we have Erie, PA, Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, and the Falcon, and these are 5 gigs in a row.
Wow.
And I'm looking forward to it because when we did this last year, I mean, by the 3rd gig, my chops were really happening. I mean, it just is it's a good feeling, you know. So I have that going, and then I'm getting ready for my premieres in New York.
Wow.
So I have some stuff going on.
Where can they find your music? Where all of that?
You can find my music at Thurman Barker at uptproductions.com. And you can find the latest there. I will be at the Catskill Art Space in Livingston Manor on the 20th of September.
Great.
And I should be in good shape, folks, because this is right after the tour. Also, tune into the radio station WJFF. I'm going to be doing a fundraiser for them this fall to raise money because, you know, of the budget cuts and all of that. So they haven't set a date yet, but anyway, that's an upcoming date that I'm doing.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time today. I loved learning about you,
Well,
and I
thank
can't
you.
wait to see more of you.
Well, thank you.
And I can only hope I have half the energy that you have.
Well,
You are going to be my inspiration as I go forward.
Thank you, Michelle. I've had some inspiration. Well, there was a Richard Harper. He's a trombone player, and when I was living in New York, I used to ride my bike from East Village up to Central Park. And long story short, he taught me about race walking. So that's what I do. And I'm up to 2 miles and 20 minutes.
Wow. All right, you're going to start. That's going to be the next gig too. You're going to
Exactly.
start
I'm gonna
a
get
club,
that
and we're
going.
going to get that going. All right.
Exactly.
All right.
Michelle, it's been a blast.
Oh, it's been
Thank
so
you
much fun.
much.
Thank you so
Yes,
much for
yes,
joining
yes,
us
yes,
today. I
sure,
really
sure.
appreciate it. And thank you for your music. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the wisdom you have put amongst so many other musicians out there. We really appreciate it. And
Well, in short, I'm only carrying on the legacy of all the great musicians before me.
I love that. I love that. And that is a perfect way to end this episode of Full Steam Ahead. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like.